The corridor lights hummed in pulses, washing the sterile metal walls in clinical blue. Lyra Kale walked with steady, deliberate steps, her boots echoing softly against the titanium floor. Draped over her shoulders like a living shadow was Echo 9, the galaxy's most feared bioengineered predator, limbs curled around her in an oddly protective embrace. She moved past armed guards and glass-walled observation pods, unchallenged, unhurried. Their eyes tracked her, filled with alarm, confusion, and awe, but no one raised a weapon. Not yet. It had imprinted on her. 3 hours ago, it had been locked behind quantum-sealed barriers, twitching with instinct and venom, studied from a distance by people who thought they had control. 3 hours ago, Lyra had been just another xenogeneticist, elbow-deep in genome coding and neural mapping, quietly waiting for her moment. No one had predicted that the moment would choose her instead. The containment breach wasn't supposed to happen. Alpha Chamber's fail-safes were airtight, its defenses layered and redundant. But something slipped. A spike in radiation? A flicker in the power grid? No one knew. The alarm screamed, klaxons painted the walls red, and Echo 9 broke free with the precision of a predator born to kill. It dismembered the nearest drone, twisted through auto turrets like vapor. Panic swept the lab. Scientists scrambled. Defense units flooded in. Lyra didn't run. She stood frozen as the creature turned to her. Not with teeth bared. Not with bloodlust. It hesitated. And then it moved, not to strike but to curl around her. Now, in the wake of chaos, she moved through the pristine corridors of Biovault Theta 9, bearing it like a strange badge of honor. Her mind ticked through possibilities. Echo 9 was a hybridized apex organism designed for war, surveillance, infiltration. It could phase between spectrums, communicate in frequencies humans couldn't hear, adapt in minutes. And yet it clung to her like a child. She should be dead. Everyone else was. Her comms unit chimed softly, a private channel flickering to life. Dr. Kale, came the clipped voice of Commander Jern. Stand down. Security units are en route. You are in violation of containment code. She cut the transmission. The comm crackled, then fell silent. Her free hand brushed the slick carapace of Echo 9, feeling the subtle tremble of its respiration. Its limbs adjusted slightly, not to tighten but to balance. Like it knew her movements. She thought of the others, Dr. Raleen, her former mentor, reduced to a smear on lab tile. Raleen had warned her once. Don't get close to them. Even empathy leaves a residue. But Lyra hadn't been chasing connection. She'd been chasing understanding. All her life, she'd studied the interface between alien cognition and human neurology, trying to find a bridge. Most saw the predators as biological weapons. She saw a mirror. The lights flickered. Echo 9's had snapped toward the ceiling, limbs twitching. Lyra paused. Something else was moving in the station. Security, maybe. Or the failsafe drones. The creature made a low, clicking noise in its throat, a kind of sonar language she hadn't yet translated. It wasn't panic. It was curiosity. She whispered, "Not yet," and it settled again. 2 turns ahead was the core genetics wing, off-limits, even to her. Beyond that, the emergency launch bay. If she could reach it before full lockdown, she didn't know what she would do after that. She only knew what she couldn't do. Hand this creature over. Not after what she'd seen. In the initial sync burst, the moment of imprint, Echo 9 had transmitted flashes of thought. Not images, but impressions, pain, abandonment, sterile light, a cage. But also a face, hers. Somehow, before it even breached its chamber, it had known her. That wasn't instinct. That was memory. The lab must have tampered with more than DNA. They had planted recognition. She turned sharply into the genetics wing, bypassing biometric scans with an override code she was never supposed to know. Echo 9's limbs flexed but remained relaxed, as if it trusted her judgment more than its own sensory input. A part of her still waited for the sting of its tail in her back. For the claws. For the end. It never came. Inside, Rows of gene spires pulsed with blue and green light, each one cataloging a different nightmare. Parasitic flyers, microbursters, cognitive mimics. She paused before an encrypted file hub and keyed in her credentials. Denied. She tried Ralene's clearance. Access granted. Dozens of classified files blinked into existence, streaming across the holopad. Lyra sifted through the fragments, heart racing. Project Echo wasn't just about breeding weapons. It was about linking them, pairing bioentities with specific human hosts through engineered neurological empathy. Remote control was inefficient. Real control came from connection. But none of the previous attempts had survived. The link caused madness or rejection. All except Subject 9. Echo 9. And her. A soft hiss drew her attention. The far chamber door opened. Footsteps. Boots. Not guards. Not lab coats. Hunters. Lyra backed away from the terminal, slipping into the shadows behind a cold storage unit. Echo 9 slid silently down from her shoulders, muscles tense. Not aggressive, ready. Two figures entered, rifles raised, visors scanning. She recognized them. Private security. The same ones who once applauded her research. Now ordered to end it. Echo 9 coiled low, barely a breath in the darkness. Lyra shook her head, whispering, "Don't." One of the men turned, flashlight beams slicing through the shadows. "Kale," he said. "This isn't going to end the way you think. That thing will turn on you. You know it will." She stepped forward slowly. Then why hasn't it? The flashlight trembled. Because it's waiting for the right moment. Or maybe, she said, it's already made its choice. Behind her, Echo 9 rose to its full height, sinewy limbs gleaming under the sterile light. It didn't snarl. It didn't attack. It stood beside her. The guards didn't fire. Not yet. Lyra met their gaze, her voice steady. "We're leaving." And with the galaxy's deadliest predator walking at her side, she moved forward into the unknown. The tunnels beneath Biovault Theta 9 were designed for maintenance drones, not fugitives. Narrow, ribbed with coolant lines and choked in shadow, they twisted like arteries beneath the heart of the station. Lyra moved through them with the predator padding silently behind her. Echo 9's form shimmered under the emergency lights, almost phasing out of visible spectrum as its camouflage adapted to the dim, pulsating glow. The silence between them wasn't empty. It pulsed with something electric, like the space between two opposing magnetic fields. Not repulsion, not attraction, but tension alive with possibility. Every time Lyra glanced back, the creature was closer, not menacing, but shadowing. Watching her. Waiting. She wasn't sure if she was guiding it, or if it was guiding her. Her tablet buzzed with a faint ping, external network breach detected. Someone had accessed the station remotely. Her eyes narrowed. That was supposed to be impossible under lockdown. Someone high-ranking was pulling strings from outside. She thumbed through the feed and found the telltale signature, Commander Jern. The man never trusted automation. If he was connecting in manually, it meant he was preparing something human. Not mechanical. Not protocol. Personal. She slid the tablet away and pressed her back against a junction wall, trying to focus. Echo 9 crept past her and stopped. Its clawed fingers gently tapped a panel, then traced the air above it in a slow arc. Lyra realized it was mimicking the door's bypass interface, not trying to open it, but learning it. She blinked. "You're studying us," she whispered. "Not just reacting." The creature turned its head slightly, regarding her with that featureless, reflective dome. Somehow she knew it understood. Not words. Not yet. But intention. Emotion. They moved again, deeper into the tunnels, until the thrum of distant machinery gave way to a more dangerous sound. Voices. Real ones. Not filtered through comms. 3 men, heavily armed, sweeping the lower junctions. Lyra pulled Echo 9 back against the shadows, heart pounding. She recognized one of the voices. Lieutenant Roan. A blunt instrument of a man, loyal to command but far more loyal to procedure. The kind who would shoot first and dissect the mess later. She has to be terminated, Roan muttered. Kale's compromised. The subject's manipulating her. The words stung, more than they should have. Compromised. As if understanding made her weak. As if empathy erased intellect. We're authorized to neutralize both. Orders came through Jern directly. Lyra pressed her palm to echo Nine's chest. It was vibrating faintly, not from fear. From restraint. She could feel it. The raw power inside this creature wasn't passive. It was barely caged instinct waiting for justification. No, she breathed, not to the soldiers, but to the beast. And it listened. The search party moved on. When their footsteps faded, Lyra collapsed against the wall, exhaling for the first time in minutes. Her body trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of decision pressing in on her like gravity. The lines were blurring. She hadn't planned on running. She hadn't planned on protecting Echo, 9. But now that it had happened, she couldn't unmake it. She tapped back into her secure notes, the encrypted section she'd always kept hidden even from her supervisors. Inside were years of observations, behaviors among various Xenos that suggested not just instinct, but emergent intelligence. Micro-gestures. Recurring reactions to specific personnel. Emotional mimicry in extreme scenarios. Her colleagues had dismissed it as coincidence. Programming. Noise in the data. But she had always suspected more. Now she had proof walking beside her, breathing in sync with her, responding without coercion. But proof meant nothing if it couldn't survive. Echo. 9 let out a low, humming vibration and looked to the wall. There, half covered in pipes, was an old biometric scanner, access to the station's forgotten sublevel. Cryovault Delta. She hadn't seen it on any updated schematics. Buried. Decommissioned. Echo. 9 pressed its palm against the pad. It hissed and rejected the input. Lyra stepped forward, hesitated, then placed her own hand over the scanner. The door slid open. The vault smelled of cold metal and ozone. Rows of suspended stasis chambers lined the walls, most inactive, some shattered. This was no storage bay. This was a graveyard of abandoned research. Echo. 9 prowled ahead, nose twitching, scanning with senses she couldn't comprehend. Lyra trailed behind until a flicker from one of the broken pods caught her attention. A cracked screen. A familiar interface. She brushed away the dust, then froze. The pod was labeled Prototype Echo 1. Inside, curled in death, was something almost identical to the creature beside her. Only smaller, less developed. Its exoskeleton hadn't fully formed. Its neural growth patterns were incomplete. The logs showed termination due to failure to imprint. Lyra's breath caught. There were 9 of them. 9 attempts. She looked at Echo, 9, who now stood perfectly still, watching her. No aggression. No fear. You remember them, don't you? She whispered. It didn't move. She turned back to the terminal. There was more, encrypted messages between Dr. Aline and an off-station director. They spoke of seeded compatibility and selective neurological pairing. Her name appeared 5 times. They hadn't just observed her. They had bred Echo 9 to bond with her. They'd engineered this connection. Not a monster, she murmured. A key. The screen flickered again. An incoming transmission override. She didn't touch it, but the system auto-routed the signal to speakers in the chamber. Commander Jern's voice spilled in, low and calm. Kale. You're too deep now to pretend ignorance. Come back. Surrender the specimen. We won't make this personal. She glanced at Echo 9. It's already personal. You're risking the lives of everyone aboard. That thing is not your partner. It's a weapon. Lyra leaned in close to the mic. That weapon has shown more restraint than your men. Maybe the threat isn't the predator. Maybe it's the ones who keep trying to own it. She cut the signal. The chamber went silent again. Echo 9 stepped forward and knelt, limbs folding in. Then, with one long, deliberate movement, it extended a claw toward her datapad. Lyra hesitated, then handed it over. It used one digit, precise, careful, to tap a series of commands. A new interface bloomed to life. Not human code. A memory projection.
Static.
Images. Echoes. The creature's point of view. Blinding lights.
Tubes.
Screams. Then her. A younger Lyra, seen from afar, behind glass, pressing her hand to a viewport. Echo. 9 had seen her long before this day. Not instinct. Recognition. She stepped back, overwhelmed. You knew me. It tilted its head slightly. Somewhere above, alarms began again. This time, a single, chilling tone. Full lockdown had begun. They had minutes. Maybe less. She looked at the creature. This engineered killer that had every reason to rip her apart, but hadn't. Instead, it had chosen her. She placed a hand on its shoulder. Let's go. The launch bay loomed ahead, its vault doors sealed by layered blast shields and red-lit security fields. Lyra's pace never slowed. Echo. 9 stalked silently at her side, limbs brushing the walls, each movement calculated with predatory grace. Overhead, sirens wailed in rhythmic pulses as the station entered full lockdown. Emergency drones lined the catwalks, cameras tracking her with unblinking lenses. Still, no one fired. Inside command, they were watching. She knew it. They wanted to see how far she'd go, whether this was a collapse or an evolution. At her hip, the datapad pulsed with the last file Echo 9 had revealed, a genetic interface marked host pair complete. It had confirmed what she feared and what she had come to accept. Their bond wasn't accidental. Echo 9 had been tailored for her, neuron by neuron, gene by gene.
She was no longer just a scientist.
She was the variable they hadn't been able to control. A voice crackled through the overhead speakers, gruff and unmistakable. Dr. Kale, this is your final warning. You will not leave this station. Surrender the specimen. Lyra stepped into the center of the bay and turned in slow defiance, lifting the pad to face the nearest surveillance node. Specimen? You mean the one who showed restraint while your men fired live rounds? The one who saved me? The one you built to kill, but failed to understand. The silence that followed was deafening. Echo 9 let out a soft chitter, almost like a breath. She walked forward, stepping over a flickering security line. An automated turret above buzzed to life, locking on her heat signature. Echo 9 stiffened, limbs twitching. Lyra raised a hand. Don't, she whispered, not to the creature, but to the machine. A flicker of motion from the upper deck drew her eye. Commander Jern stood behind a transparent shield, arms crossed, watching her like a man waiting for a wild dog to bare its teeth. You think this is control, he said through the speaker. But you're still inside its cage. You just haven't realized the doors closed behind you. Lyra held his gaze, then turned to Echo 9. Is this a cage? The creature tilted its head. After a moment, it stepped past her, placing itself between her and the turret. Its limbs spread outward in a display of non-aggression, body language deliberate. Its tail swept low across the ground, unthreatening. The turret powered down. The room held its breath. Jern's voice was tight. You're playing a dangerous game. This isn't a game, she replied. It's a choice. And with that, she approached the final console, her hand shaking slightly as she entered a backdoor code, one of the many she wasn't authorized to know, but had learned anyway. Access denied. She tried another. This time, the platform shuddered to life. Echo 9 climbed the loading ramp behind her. She turned one last time to the observation deck. This isn't a threat, she said clearly, knowing the whole station was likely listening. It's proof. You built a killer and created a mind. You bred obedience and got loyalty. You wanted a weapon. What you got was someone who decided not to kill you. Jern didn't reply. Lyra tapped the launch sequence. The docking clamps hissed. External shields unlocked with a deep, resonant groan. As the pod's engine spun up, she lowered herself into the seat, the creature coiling behind her, limbs tucked in tightly, breathing calm. Outside the viewport, the stars waited. The pod launched with a thunderous burst. Acceleration pinned her to the chair, but she barely noticed. Her focus was on Echo 9, its massive head resting beside her. She reached out slowly, laying a hand against its ridged jaw. It didn't flinch. Instead, it leaned into the touch. Beneath them, Theta 9 became a shrinking speck. Lyra closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't inside a lab or under a microscope or buried under someone else's doctrine of what life could or should be. She was free. And so was Echo 9. After a few minutes, she opened the comms array and initiated a broad-range transmission. No encryption. No masking. She wanted the colonies to hear this. "My name is Lyra Kale," she said steadily. "I was a researcher at BioVault Theta 9. Today, I walked out carrying the galaxy's deadliest predator on my shoulder." She paused, glancing at the creature. "And it chose not to devour me." She let the transmission end there.
Clean.
Provocative. Enough to shatter silence across a dozen systems. Echo 9 made a low, almost musical hum. The stars stretched ahead like open pages. They had no destination yet. But she knew the galaxy would come looking for them soon enough, with questions, with weapons, with fear. Let them. She leaned back in her seat, heart still hammering. The door had closed behind her. And for once, it wasn't a prison. It was a beginning.